Hello, guys. We're recording this with a friend of ours who's been to Great Falls quite often, in Montana a lot. He's Lyle Railsback from Kermit Lynch. He's joining us from his country home in Connecticut, and we're in the snowy Montana today, cold and blowing snow. So I think it's appropriate to drink some wine and talk with our good friend about his wine and his story of wine. So, Lyle, maybe we could start there. I know you've got an interesting wine background, and just kind of tell us about yourself and how you got in this world, please.
Absolutely, pleasure. Thanks for having me, and thanks for supporting our wines. The project with my brother, we just harvested our sixth vintage together. The wines are made in Santa Ynez. The winery's in Santa Maria, but the vineyards are all in Santa Ynez, just up in the hills from Santa Barbara. And my brother and I have both been in the wine business for over a decade. Before that, I worked in restaurants for a decade. I cooked my way through college. Before that, I was bussing tables and washing dishes and really just into cooking. A school trip to Europe, fell in love with the culture and food and wine, and got back and tried to get a job as a line cook in a restaurant in Oregon's Willamette Valley. And the chef told me that he had hired a line cook and he was sorry, but he needed a sommelier. To which I replied, well, I'm 20, I'm not legally allowed to pour wine. And he said, that's okay, you'll learn. And so I got a job as a sommelier at age 20. It was really just a place that had Oregon wine. So it was a list of 100 different Oregon Pinots, and then also a page of German wine because the wife was from Germany. So that was kind of how I got into it. And I worked at some wineries in the Willamette Valley. I got to know Josh Bergstrom, Jim Prosser at J.K. Carrier. I got a job at Sokolblosser briefly. And then after college, when I graduated, I went down to San Francisco and got a job working in a French bistro and went down all sort of on fire to sell Oregon wine. And people would like order bottles of Burgundy, and I wasn't very comfortable with it. So I would like sell them, oh no, you got to try this Christum Pinot Noir instead. And then eventually, like my manager pulled me aside and he would start blind tasting me, and he'd say, okay, here's two wines. One's from France, one's from the New World. And after doing this a few times, it like totally blew my mind. And I was kind of weaned off of my Oregon Pinot Noir, even though there's still, of course, great wines there. The old world has just been doing it for so much longer, and it's obviously a much deeper pool to swim in. So that kept me in restaurants, selling European wines for a long time. I worked in a retail store in Oregon. Then I worked for a distributor in Washington, D.C., and I took that job so I could sell Kermit Lynch wines, which was kind of like the Shangri-La of the best imported wines in America. Kermit's an old hippie from Berkeley. He opened a shop in 1972, and sort of at the same time Napa is becoming a thing. And Kermit said, I'm just going to have a shop and I'm only going to sell wines I like, not things that people are asking for. I'm just going to go to France and find my own wines. And it was pretty revolutionary, and Kermit's still pretty trend setting, I guess, in that way. And
What's the name of his book? It's a really interesting for anybody that's watching this. I think it's a fun read, and how he started and
yeah,
the wine trail or something.
Yeah, 1986, he published Adventures on the Wine Route, and
Mhm.
it's how he got into it. And it's really like down to earth. And it was definitely one of the first books I read about wine that I was like, oh, wait,
Mhm.
this can be fun and casual. It doesn't have to be a textbook.
Right.
So,
But
uh,
anyway, so you went to work with Kermit when and
yeah, I went to work for Kermit in 2008. After the financial sort of crisis, I had started a distributor with a friend of mine back in Portland again, and we were selling some Kermit Lynch wines along with some other stuff that we found ourselves in Europe. And when the financial crisis happened, we had to call Kermit and say, listen, we all of our investors pulled out overnight. And the next day, Kermit had me fly down to Berkeley and have lunch with him at Chez Panisse to interview me, and he gave me a job. So it was really lucky, and I started working for Kermit in December of 2008. I was the Northwest sales manager. I was doing Oregon, Washington, and eventually Idaho, and then I started working with Kurt Weingartner in Montana. So now I moved to California, sort of to do more national stuff with Kermit, and then I moved to New York 4 years ago, and I'm based in New York. Except now I've escaped and I'm in the woods of Connecticut. But yeah, it's the job of my life. Kermit's Book of Wines is second to none. We work exclusively with small farmers who are making wines the old way. And I think I've taken everything I've learned the last decade working for Kermit, along with my brother, who's got another winery called Ludi. And my brother's worked in restaurants as well. He's spent harvest in Burgundy and other places in Austria. So we've both taken sort of a synthesis of everything we've learned in the wine business, and we're trying to apply it to what's happening in Santa Barbara, which for us is probably the most exciting place to make wine in America right now. There's just really amazing access to vineyards up in Santa Ynez, Santa Maria. So the two wines you guys have, our rosé was really the wine that started it for us. My brother had a winery for 10 years called Ludi, and then he approached me and said, what if we make a rosé together, kind of as an homage to our heroes at Domaine Tempier in Bandol. Lulu Peyrode was the proprietress for Tempier. She just passed away earlier this year. She died at age 102. And she was amazing character and life force, and really is probably the reason that all of us are drinking rosé, because Tempier was kind of the gold standard that changed people's perception for rosé, and Kermit started importing it in the 70s, and it was really the rosé that changed it all. And the recipe of rosé at Tempier was rosé direct to press, meaning that the grapes are harvested only for rosé rather than a saunier. The wine originally was aged in barrels, and then they would allow a malolactic, a secondary fermentation. So Eric and I started doing that with rosé, kind of as like a throwback to the old style of Tempier. So when you taste this wine, you'll pay attention to the mouthfeel. You definitely get this sort of creaminess. This is a malolactic fermentation. We harvest the grapes very early, so there's good natural acidity. This is dry. It's definitely not a sweet rosé. But you have this creamy mouthfeel that makes it a lot easier to drink. You find that with Tempier as well. Not that we're comparing ourselves to Tempier, but it's definitely kind of the standard of where we'd like to go, at least.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's got, like you said, it's kind of a big mouthfeel to it for sure. It would stand up to food and cheeses really well, right? I mean, this isn't just a sipper on the porch, right?
It can be both. I think it's
it could be, right?
Yeah, we're harvesting at 22 bricks, so it's Carignan, Sanso, and Grenache. About mostly Carignan. I think 60% Carignan in this vintage, and all of those grapes are harvested at 22 bricks. So we have about, I think, 12.6 alcohol. So lower alcohol, easy drinking, light and refreshing. But because of that mallow, it's definitely a lot more full. And the whole thing with Tempier, with Bandol, and with Tempier is that it's the single best food pairing wine on the planet. Alice Waters at Chez Panisse still says it's her favorite wine in the world, and it's so magical because you can pour it with things that are hard to match with wine, like artichokes, asparagus, garlic, anchovies, and this goes in the same way. It can go with a lot of sort of green flavors and vegetables and garlic and harder to match things.
Is your brother the winemaker, or are you both involved in that part? Or?
No, both of us are involved in decision making as far as blending and making certain pick choices and all that. The winemaker is a really great guy named Dieter, who's the winemaker for Presqu'île. So we make our wines at Presqu'île. They're friends of ours, and they helped us partner in our winery. So everything's made at Presqu'île. They have like a state-of-the-art winery. It allows us to use all old barrels. So it's important for us to not. We want to use wood barrels so that you get a good respiration and breathing and can get good mallow, but we don't want to have to use new barrels. A, they're expensive, and B, we don't want the taste of wood sort of, masking the flavor of the wine.
Right. No, I think it's beautiful. Yeah, it's fun. Should we move on to your red wine, the red blend thing?
Yeah.
There it is.
You have Mark, you have 2017?
18. 18, yeah. Right? I'm getting old. I don't know. It says 2018.
Okay, cool. Is it it just says Rouge, or does it say the name of a grape on it?
It says 2018 California red wine.
Yes, okay. Fantastic.
Can you see it?
Yes, I guess I see. Great. What does the red say? Cuvée spéciale. Oh, Carignan. So you have the Carignan.
Okay.
So that's 100% Carignan.
Oh, it is. Okay. I thought it just says red wine, but so I assumed red blend since it said red wine. But
it's a little confusing. We decided not to like call it Carignan because I don't know.
Nobody knows what it is in America,
No
probably.
one knows what it is. And
Mm.
also, like, we've spent a lot of time in the south of France where historically they use a blend of grapes, and people, in America, we're so addicted to what is the grape. The first question people ask you is, what's the grape? Is it Cab? Is it Merlot? In the south of France, they never even talk about the grape, and you'll visit 10 different wineries. They're all making a blend of Grenache or Syrah or Carignan or Mourvedre, and it really, the taste of the place informs the wine, I think, almost as much or more so than just the name of the grape. So that's kind of why we chose that labeling thing, but it is confusing. Carignan is the grape. This is Carignan that's done whole cluster. So we did partial carbonic whole cluster fermentation.
You can really taste that carbonic always has that same flavor to it, no matter if it's Pinot or Gamay or whatever, you got a little bit of that, effervescence, and I don't know, the fruit is just beautiful, lighter style.
Yeah, definitely. It extracts less tannins and flavor from the skins, and instead gives you more flavor just from the inside, from the juice of the berries. So really, what they're Beaujolais, easy, juicy drinkability. We wanted a wine that was just kind of a crusher that you can serve slightly chilled, regardless of the time of year. This is an easy drinking barbecue wine or whatever. Good for burgers, good for pizza.
Yeah, pub food, huh? Yeah, I agree. Cool. Well, I wanted to talk about maybe the sip and dip before we get off this Zoom call. You and I have been there at least a couple of times, I think. But he was telling me before we started this recording that I should have gone over to the sip and dip and recorded from there, but they're not open in the afternoon. So anyway, Lyle's been a good friend for a long time. We've had a lot of fun together. Sometimes too much fun.
I think so. I remember that as well. Part of it.
Anything else you'd like to add about Railsback wine, or any other insights into what these people? We're actually doing this for Went Advertising. It's going to go on our website. It's a all-female owned advertising agency. I think they're the biggest in Montana, or they're one of the biggest anyway. They do a super job, and they love their wine. And they were in the other day, and they said, what can we do to do something special for our upcoming Christmas party? I said, well, let's get Lyle's wine, and then we'll get Lyle on the horn, and he can talk, and you guys could listen while you're drinking it. So, cheers to the Went crew too. Thanks for the inspiration, and we'll be selling lots of your wine, Lyle. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for supporting us. It's fun to have a family project that I can do with my brother. And we're working with, like I said, some really amazing vineyard sources. One thing I didn't mention, both the Rosé and the Carignan that you have are both coming from the same vineyard. This is a vineyard in Santa Ynez called Camp 4, which it's called that because it's the fourth stagecoach stop on the original Stagecoach Trail of California. And today it's owned by the Chumash Indian tribe. So it's a Native American owned vineyard. The vineyard is run by a woman who's the only female Native American winemaker in the entire United States. Tara Gomez is her name. She's making her own wines, but then we're also working with her. They're in process to transition the farming to organics for the parcels that we use. It's currently only sustainable, but sustainable with the hope to move organics with this next vintage.
Nice.
So they're really cool people, and it's great to support them, and we appreciate everything you guys are doing for us.
Yeah. And the other thing, you guys, when you come into the store, we have lots and lots of Kermit Lynch wines in here. And I always tell people, turn the label around. If you see Kermit Lynch on the back of the label, just buy it. I've never really had a poor wine from Kermit's lineup. So sometimes even if you don't know the label, you don't know the grape, or you don't know the region, if you know that Kermit is importing it, or you guys, I mean, I know you help with all this tasting and everything too now. So I think you have to trust palates sometimes too, and you guys have great palates and import great wines. So that's a good rule when I'm out of town. If I see Kermit, I'm gonna buy it.
Totally, and I think that's also a good reminder. If you ask Kermit like what his favorite wine is, the answer is the next one. And I think, we all fall into sort of ruts where it's, I'm into white Burgundy. I only want to drink white Burgundy, and then next month it's something else. But I think this like constant discovery. Kermit's in his 70s now, and the idea that he could just sit at home and drink Ravenel and Koch, but he's not. He's wanting the next new thing, and I think that's so cool. And yeah, I definitely agree with you. Just turning the bottle around and trying an unknown experience rather than just going for the same thing you've always had is good advice.
All right. Thanks so much, Lyle.
Thanks, man.
Well,
Really appreciate it.
once this is all done, we can't wait to have you back in Montana, and we'll do it. And I know you love sparkling wine, so maybe we'll do a sparkling tasting, and we'll go to the sip and dip.
Yeah, get the sip and dip. I love it, bro.
All right. Thanks, buddy. See ya.
See ya.